Okay, my name is Anna Johnson. I'll be your webinar host today. I'm a senior researcher with the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy in their industry program, and I'm really happy to join you all. Please, as we go through this webinar, I would love you all to engage with us throughout. There's a lot of different options for you to engage. Please feel free to use the chat for discussing what you're hearing from our speakers in real time. You can also use the Q&A button at any point to ask questions of either of the speakers. We'll be doing a Q&A section with all speakers at the end. So please add your questions as you go, and we'll try to get to them in the final 20 minutes. Also, if you want to go to the Q&A, you can upvote questions that you like as well, and we'll try to make sure that we are addressing the questions that are that most participants are interested in. And then finally, like I said, we will field as many of your questions as we can at the end of the presentation. We'll save about 20 minutes, so hopefully we'll get to a good chunk of them. So with that, I'm going to introduce you all to our suite of speakers. We have 3 speakers joining us today. Our first will be Reuven Sussman. Reuven is the director of the Behavior, Health, and Human Dimensions program here at ACEEE. He's also the lead author on a new report released today, which is investigating the reasons why consumers do or do not transition their home appliances off of fossil fuel. So he'll be speaking about his new report today. Following Reuven will be Friday Appoliski. Friday is the Director of Communications with the Building Decarbonization Coalition. She will be discussing today some of BDC's initiatives around promoting residential electrification. And then finally, Francisco Mattiello will speak with us. Francisco is a program manager with the District Appliance Efficiency Standards Program with the DC Department of Energy and Environment. Francisco today will be sharing information with us about DOEE programs to encourage residential electrification. And so with that, I think we're ready to pass this over to our first speaker, which is Reuven. So Reuven, we're really excited to hear from you about your new report.
Krista, can you allow me to share my screen, please? Oh, I got it. Thanks. Okay. All right. Well, I'm very excited to be here as well. And I'm thrilled to be sharing the results of this new report with you. We at ACEEE with my colleague, Jonah Eisen, just finished and published this new report called Marketing and Promoting Electrification Using Behavioral Science. It centers on results from a national survey. My name is Reuven Sussman, as mentioned. I direct the Behavior, Health, and Human Dimensions program at ACEEE. My background is in social and environmental psychology, and I have an experience studying why people act in energy efficient or non-efficient ways and how to encourage energy efficiency. So I want to start with just a question that I included in our survey that I'm going to ask to all of you. If your home's current heating system broke down and you had the choice to replace it with a new appliance or system powered by one of the following fuels, which would you choose? And we, of course, explained to folks that you should assume all options have the same cost and ease of installation. It's a big assumption, but we wanted to get at what would folks do, all things being equal. So now that you've thought of your answer, I'm going to tell you what Americans thought of their answer. And I mentioned this particular question because this and 2 other questions like it about heat, hot water and cooking were really the centerpieces of our survey. We looked at what people were currently using, and if they chose the electricity when they weren't previously using it, we asked them why. When they weren't using electricity and they didn't choose electricity, we asked them why not. We also split up the survey to see which of the people that were more likely to choose electricity when they weren't already using electricity. So I'll tell you all about that in a moment. But before I get to that, I guess we should probably at least acknowledge the reasons why we would like to electrify. If it's not already obvious, climate change has to do with carbon emissions. Carbon emissions have to do with electricity generation. Residential buildings account for about 20% of greenhouse gas emissions. And if you break down the fuels used in the home by major appliances and one sort of less major appliance that can use electricity or non-electric fuels. So by less major, I talk about clothes drying, but space heating, water heating, cooking, the big ones we're going to talk about here because they're in every home. We look by housing units. Space heating, water heating, cooking, and clothes drying is primarily electric across the United States, which is good because we found that folks that are already using electric, the vast majority would stick with electric if their systems broke, which is very interesting and good. However, still we have about 75% of American homes have some natural gas use in their home. And it's a very prevalent fuel. And then there's a smattering of other fuels used. One study we found from 2022 indicated that simply switching from a gas furnace to an efficient heat pump would reduce carbon emissions by 48 to 53% for a home. Another analysis looked at converting a heat pump space and heat pump hot water heating, converting to heat pump space and water heating would reduce carbon emissions by 35 to 93% of a home's heating emissions. So the point is, residential electricity use contributes to climate change, and electrification can help alleviate that problem and mitigate climate change. So we conducted a survey. We wanted to know why folks would switch and why they would not. And this was a nationally representative sample of just over 1,800 Americans. We asked them some 3 versions of if your system broke, what would you replace it with and why? As well as a lot of other questions, which you can get into in the actual report. The 3 main research findings from the 3 questions I'm going to look at today are: why do people choose to electrify when they make that decision? Why did they choose not to for each of those 3 end uses? What are the barriers? And then what's a behavior-based strategy that we can use to encourage consumers to electrify, which was an interesting finding that we kind of stumbled over that I wanted to share with you. Okay, so first of all, why electrify? We have 3 major end uses we looked at, and for each of them, if people said they would choose to switch from fossil fuels to electric, we asked them why. Very often, the reason was electricity is a safer option for my home, or electricity is the cleanest or best for the environment. And these different percentages, I should mention, it's like when people chose to switch, 32% of them gave this answer for heat. When people chose to switch for hot water, 29% of them gave this answer. When people chose to switch to electric for cooking, 44% of them gave this answer. Another answer is electricity or electric appliances are perceived as more energy efficient. Electricity is a more reliable option for my home. And for cooking, electric stoves are easier to clean. That was the second most popular answer for cooking, which is just interesting and notable, I would say. So I've got the question, is climate change a winning message for this and for other energy efficiency upgrades also? And the answer is kind of mixed. Yes, people who believe in climate change are more likely to switch. It was what we might call a good predictor of choosing to switch for heat, hot water, and cooking. In our survey, we just wanted to know a basic question. There's much more nuanced ways of asking about if you believe in climate change, but we just asked, do you think climate change is happening? And you can answer yes, no, unsure. So 74% said yes. And when you say yes, you're more likely to switch. And when people chose to switch, they often cited environmental reasons, as I mentioned in the previous slide. But among the people that said they believed in climate change, less than half of them agreed or strongly agreed that residential electrification is a critical action for mitigating climate change. We also did asked them to do a task where they rank ordered things they thought were important for addressing climate change, and switching out your hot water heater and the 2 electrification options were much lower rated than they should be. So it got us thinking, first of all, yes, use climate change message with those who are concerned, which tend to be along the coasts and in urban areas. But when you use that message, make sure you're drawing a line between electrification and climate change. So you're doing a little bit of education, explaining that electrification is a climate solution. All right, let's get into why not switch. This is what most people want to know, because most folks who are not behavioral scientists just assume that if electrification is better, there must be barriers to doing it, and that's the only reason why they're not doing it. Barriers are important. We're going to dive into those now. So we looked at folks that are currently using fossil fuels for heat and chose to stay with fossil fuels when their system broke. And the number one reason by far was a perception that electricity costs too much. And that is usually having to do with ongoing costs, but it could in some cases include total cost of ownership, which might include some upfront costs too. And then in a far, far second, electricity is not the most efficient option. So they think that it's less efficient to use electricity than natural gas or other fossil fuels. For hot water, identical responses, only a slightly stronger perception that efficiency is less for hot water. And then for cooking, cooking is a very interesting one. The number one reason was that there's a pervasive belief among people that cook with gas now that gas offers a better cooking experience or gas has better heat distribution. And in a distant second, that electricity cost is higher. And we think that folks are primarily considering radiant heat or in electric resistance cooktops as opposed to induction, because induction is in only maybe 5% of homes right now. And we didn't want people to, we didn't ask specifically about induction versus radiant electric because we didn't think enough people had experience with induction to really make a guess at it or to really tell us about it. And we didn't want them to make a guess. It also shows that gas might be, or cooking might be an interesting domain where it's more than just about the cost of electricity or the structural barriers. People love their gas stoves in a way that they might not be as emotionally attached to their other appliances. And to further elucidate that fact, here are some other reasons people mentioned for preferring to stick with gas for cooking. Cooking with electric is just not as good. Cooking with gas is easier. Cooking with gas is faster. Food cooked on gas stoves tastes better. That's my favorite one. I'm used to cooking with gas, or I just prefer cooking with gas or flames. And this is why I feel like behavioral science is a great tool for shifting preferences in the area of cooking. It's not just about finances or structural problems. There's also an emotional component. And this is the last part I'm going to talk to you about, which was just a fun sort of finding that we stumbled over. We found that there might be gateway electrification measures. We asked people, do you have a lawn, and B, do you own at least some electric lawn equipment? And if people said yes, they were significantly more likely to say yes to switching from gas to electric for heat, hot water, and cooking especially. It was so interesting. And unlike all the other measures where having an all-electric home makes it more likely that you'll want to stay electric, this one does not have anything to do with an electric. People who have an all-electric home don't differ from people who have a gas hookup in this regard. So it could be a really great gateway measure. It's possible that encouraging purchase of some electric lawn equipment could encourage the purchase of other electrification measures. I do want to note that the cooking result was statistically significant at the 0.05 level. Heat and hot water was 0.05 and 0.06, which you would technically consider borderline, but are so close to being borderline that we can definitely talk about them. And if we had a larger sample size, more people with lawns, then we would be able to say more definitively that it's a strong effect. We also found that similarly, owning some solar technology, rooftop solar and storage, solar water heater, significantly increased the likelihood of choosing to switch your heat, hot water, and cooking. Now here, there's also the financial benefit. But generally, as a psychologist, I really love the question, why? Why would this gateway electrification measure lead to further electrification? And there's a few great theories out there. One of them is positive spillover. We like to remain consistent with our actions. So when we do something in one domain that reflects us, that we think we feel good about, like electrifying our lawn equipment, then when an opportunity comes up to do a similar thing and to remain consistent, you're motivated to do that, especially if somebody brings that to your attention. The one that I think is really important is deep education or understanding. When you learn something in a hands-on way, you have a positive experience that's more than just reading about it or hearing about it. You get an emotional reaction. It just becomes a more powerful driver of future behavior. And that's why I think hands-on experience is really a critical element here. And then, of course, for solar, there's a financial benefit. Once you have that power generation on your home, you want to use it for more electrification. So my suggestion here is for program administrators out there, state energy offices, to provide that hands-on experience. It might be, a rebate program for lawnmowers and other lawn equipment, but it could also be, induction cooktop lending program, or a hands-on experience program for contractors to learn about heat pumps. That kind of thing can be really impactful and helpful. I do think this is an interesting result, but as I mentioned, I would love to do additional follow-up research to really dive into it. So let's just get to the conclusions and recommendations.
And
Number
Ruben,
one,
can we wrap? Yeah.
yeah, target electrification campaigns to those who are most open to switching. 2, use messages that highlight the right benefits. 3, address perceived barriers and benefits through policies, programs, and behavioral strategies. And 4, provide direct experience to help increase acceptance and adoption. Thank you so much. And I do hope that you all can download the full report and get everything you need about the research. And I look forward to your questions.
Thanks so much, Ruben. That was great. And it's a perfect transition to our next speaker, which is Friday, who will be talking a little bit more about the programming side of electrification. So Friday, I'll give you a moment to pull up your slides. Here we go.
All right. Well, yes, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about the switches on. My name is Friday Apoliski. I'm the Director of Communications at the Building Decarbonization Coalition. And I'm going to talk to you about the Switches On, which is our marketing, education, and outreach initiative focused on raising awareness, favorability, and preference for modern, efficient electric appliances. So next slide, please. With this initiative, we're really thinking about the customer journey as a funnel. So at the top of this funnel is education, raising awareness on what home electrification is. What is a heat pump? How do these modern technologies work, right? We're normalizing the language here. We're really talking about education. Then farther down the funnel is inspiration. You know now what a heat pump is, and let's get you excited about wanting one, right? This is really about telling stories about how life is better with all electric appliances. And it is. And then finally, at the bottom of this funnel, when you are ready to go, we have online tools and resources to help facilitate that switch. So next slide, please. And one more click. At the core of this initiative is our digital experience. This is our website with information, tools, and resources. This is where you come no matter where you are in the funnel. We have something for you here. We talked a little bit about how there are, people come at this from a different place. So we've got all of it lives in this really core piece. Without this digital experience, none of the rest of it works. Next click. But equally important are our partnerships. This is how we tell the stories. So we're telling all kinds of stories with all kinds of partners and in all kinds of experiential settings. And last click. Finally, at the top of this funnel, which is often overlooked and yet really vitally important, we address that using media, right? So paid media, which you all know of as advertising. We do it in a targeted way. Earned media, that's press and journalism. And then owned media, which is our social media channels, the things that we can control, blogs, newsletters, website, all that kind of stuff. So let's dive into this funnel and talk about how our work reflects some of the findings from this report. Next slide, please. Yeah, this one. So let's start at the top of the funnel with education and awareness. The report notes that climate change is like not the main driver for decision making, and I would say that we agree. We have seen that staying positive and focusing on the benefits of electric appliances can be really successful. That our current campaign, we actually call it Electric Life is Better. And you can see it's all about the benefits of heat pumps. And we really think you can tell this story from a number of different really positive angles without having to talk about the climate if you don't want to. And for us, staying positive is really, really core to our brand. We are pro-electrification rather than anti anything else. And an interesting note about this campaign is that we were able to target folks with solar and who were solar overproducers with specific messaging around heat pump water heating and other heat pumps. And we found that that really drove up favorability and perception. So I would definitely say that is a gateway appliance like we just heard about. So definitely a good start. Folks who have solar are really very much more interested. So next slide, please. Now I want to talk about inspiration and stories. This is where our initiative has the most legs and some of the best examples of the findings in this report. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of partners that help us tell stories. Some of our favorites are our ambassadors. They're our volunteers. We have over 500 ambassadors in California who are doing over 100 events every year, and we are expanding as we speak. They speak a plethora of languages and have all kinds of incredible talents. So the report mentions these gateway appliances, specifically lawnmowers. And while I don't have any specific anecdotes about lawnmowers, I can say that we have found the induction hob to be an incredible gateway tool. We like to say that the kitchen is the front door to an all-electric home. Induction demos with the smells of food and the sizzle of cooking, that's the gateway, right? Experiencing the multicultural nature of food with an audience, that's the gateway, right? Offering opportunities for ambassadors to do electric home tours, induction demos for their friends and families and neighbors, that's the gateway. So next slide, please. So what does that look like? First, it's about getting folks out into their communities. We did some of our own research and we found that no matter your political leaning, the folks people trust the most are their friends and neighbors. And by the way, after that, it's chefs. And we have a whole chefluencer program that we can talk about at another time or in the Q&A session. But that's really what makes our ambassador program or ambassador network so vital, right? They are friends and neighbors. That is who we trust. So we send them out to tell their stories. You can see in some of these photos, they're tabling, they're talking about appliances and providing resources. And I want to just point out on the right, there's a screenshot from Instagram. This is an ambassador who's hosting a meal party. We created a meal kit. So it has a hob, it has some recipes and instructions and specific talking points. For example, if you are hosting a bunch of friends to talk about your induction cooktop, we might say, ask one of your guests to put on a pot of water to boil, right? Because the recipe maybe has pasta on it. Or ask another guest to help you clean up at the end and let them clean the cooktop and experience how easy it is to clean it. And these same things apply for, your heat pump your heat pump HVAC. If you walk into someone's house on today, which is the hottest day of the year so far where I am, and it is cool and nice, there is an immediate experience there, right? So we can help folks with those talking points. Next slide, please. So really, these are real people telling real stories about how these appliances benefit their lives. And we are working to elevate those stories in the media. So we've seen local press and in-language media really enthusiastically sharing these stories. And that's really important because it helps go from the one-to-one personal experience to taking that same trust in with friends and neighbors and spreading it through an entire community and a much broader audience. So next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So then we're taking these same stories and we're creating content with them for our own channels. And I just wanted to point out these in particular. This story of Yang Shipman, she is so wonderful. She talks about how she is responsible for feeding her family and cooking for her family, and she loves to cook. But now that she has an induction range, it is so much faster for her. The cooking is faster, the cleanup is faster. She has so much extra time now that she gets to go play extra pickleball with her girlfriends. And we think that's wonderful. So you can check her out on our YouTube channel. We also have stories of contractors talking about why they are moving towards heat pumps, why heat pumps are great for their business, right? Making sure that we are telling these stories and making these resources available with information coming from these trusted sources, right? That's really an important key. Next slide, please. So, and finally, I have to share that when you open the door to all of the stories and all of the talents, you really are able to meet people where they are. So in this case, we have an extraordinary ambassador. His name is Mike Roberts. He is also a musician and a songwriter, and he made a song about heat pumps. It's a steamy R&B song that will surely have you dancing in your chair. Trust me, it's an absolute earworm. You can find it at theswitcheson.org in our blog section. We made a video, and really, this is about recognizing that there isn't just one way to tell a story and raise awareness, right? We need everybody to be using their talents and talking about these issues in a way that resonates with the folks who trust them, right? So we need musicians and artists and chefs and neighbors and scientists and pickleball players. We need everybody, right? We need all of their different talents. And when we do that, we really are able to meet people where they are. So last slide, thank you. So the last part of our funnel is switching. And as I said, we have the tools to help facilitate that. We have an incentive finder that includes all of the available incentives, federal, state, and local, every single thing that is available, as well as a contractor directory that connects folks with those installers who are part of the incentive programs, and allows you to reach out to them directly and make that connection, and really help, like I said, help facilitate the switching process. We also have a product finder tool. If you are, again, somewhere in that inspiration journey and you need some more information, there are all kinds of tools and resources on theswitcheson.org. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Francisco and look forward to answering all of your questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Friday. I feel like that was a missed opportunity not to start our webinar with that song. Next time, we'll know for sure.
Next time.
Next time, okay. Yeah, now we're going to go to our third speaker, Francisco, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the information about programs to encourage residential electrification. Take it away, Francisco.
Moment. There we go. Thank you, Friday, and thank you, Anna. Hello, my name is Francisco Mattia. I'm with the District of Columbia's Department of Energy and Environment in our energy administration. I'm the program manager for the District Appliance Efficiency Standards, which sets energy and water use standards for consumers and commercial kitchen appliances and products. I also coordinate DOEE's internal electrification working group, which keeps track of DOEE and the DC government's electrification programs, as well as investigates technology and policy for electrification related issues. DOEE has multiple programs that further our climate and energy goals through electrification. To name a few, there is AHEP, the Affordable Home Electrification Program, AHRA, the Affordable Housing Retrofit Accelerator. There's also the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, which is an independent utility that DOEE funds and provides guidance to. DOEE is also responsible for developing and implementing long-term plans such as Clean Energy DC and currently Clean Energy DC 2.0. We also work closely with the codes board on the adoption of energy efficiency, electrification in the building codes. For this discussion, we'll focus on AHEP and the AHRA programs and the DCSEU appliance rebates. We'll consider how behavioral science has impacted them and what we learned so far. So the Affordable Home Electrification Program, or AHEP, as we call it, is our program that focuses on electrification of single-family homes for income-qualified households. Qualification and other low-income programs, such as Weatherization Assistance Program, provides low-income homeowners the opportunity to sign up for whole home electrification upgrades. It is coordinated with DOEE's Solar for All programs, which provides no-cost rooftop solar or community solar options for homeowners. The DCSEU implements and administers the electrification projects. These projects are funded by the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund, a surcharge on utility bills. For 2023, the DCSEU served 34 income-qualified households through AHEP. Of these, 33 households upgraded to heat pumps. The slide says 30. In the report, they separated out mini splits, which are also heat pumps, so 30 plus 3, 33. They also did 25 heat pump water heaters were installed, 21 electrical heavy ups were completed. The DCSEU also installed 176 single-family PV systems and 28 community renewable energy facilities for a total of 6.34 megawatts of installed solar capacity. While the work done by the DCSEU is commendable, there have been some growing pains for successful implementation of AHEP. These retrofits are heavily reliant on resident coordination. Residents that were more difficult to communicate and coordinate with would lead to delays in the project. To speed up the pace of project completions, it is important to either put a lot of work into working with difficult homeowners or prioritizing those that cooperate, but at that risk further alienating those that are not as cooperative. Another major shortcoming was that of all the households served, not even one adopted to have a free induction stove installed. A free stove, nobody wanted it. While I don't have the specifics for why they were rejected, we do know that it was the installers who were offering the appliance options to the homeowners. This tells us that the contractors are not very good at explaining the benefits of induction cooking, but they are very good at explaining the benefits of efficient heat pump space heating and heat pump water heating. We also observed that residents were concerned about costs. This was not an issue for those who opted to enroll in the Solar for All program, but the few who did not want solar, they complained about their electricity bills increasing. The Affordable Housing Retrofit Accelerator, or AHRA, is DOEE's program to complete deep retrofits of multifamily affordable housing. The DCSU also implements this program, financing and overseeing the retrofit projects with help from the DC Green Bank. One goal of this program is to help multi-unit affordable housing comply with DC's building energy performance standards. This requires coordination with building owners, but generally has direct impact on renters' utility bills depending on who is covering the electric or gas utilities. 2,800 tenants were served in 2023. How renters benefit from electrification has a different character from homeowners. Renters don't have as much say in appliance selection and must coordinate with landlords, property managers, or building owners to pursue these upgrades. These can have large costs for the building owners who may not see the benefits of energy savings. Recently, DOEE has been working on outreach and communication strategies through our equitable electrification grants to increase outreach to low-income communities. One portion of this involved a series of focus groups. Two of the focus groups were at low-income majority African-American multifamily complex and two at a low-income majority Hispanic multifamily building seen here in the slide. The focus groups were asking questions to gauge perceptions on electrification. The final report of these focus groups is not published, so I'm not able to go into many of the details of it, but I will share some interesting observations that were noted. There's a lot of misperceptions in both communities. especially around energy costs and cooking. Most residents were concerned with increasing electrical utility bills, especially for the units that gas was included in rent, but electricity was not. There were not very strong opinions on space or water heating, with a few saying that gas heat could be too intense and smells bad, while electrical heating was easier to control. And when I say not strong opinions, I mean they were fine with electrification. They weren't really have a strong opinion on it. Yeah. And while both facilities had many respondents expressing gas cooking was superior because it was easier to control or faster, both communities have major concerns about indoor air quality. In the majority Hispanic building, though there was widespread perception that gas cooking was better, there was also widespread willingness to electrify. Environment, health, and safety being reasons they were willing to adapt to cooking with electricity. A tidbit that stuck out to me was that some respondents in the building who were migrants had more direct experience with climate catastrophes, resulting in displacement and migration. So the initial overall impression from these focus groups is that while they mostly thought gas was better for cooking, they were also mostly open to electrifying cooking. They associate gas usage with climate change and poor air quality. The benefits of cooking with gas didn't outweigh the negatives, leaving them to be more open to adapting their practices. Or perhaps for these migrants, they have had much less exposure to the gas industry marketing. And this brings us towards kitchens. As the Reuven report points out, kitchen electrification has some stark differences in how people perceive it compared to other appliances. This is a central part of the home, one that we touch and see frequently. We use it in intimate ways. The gas industry has spent decades marketing the superiority of gas cooking, but these are based off of less quantifiable qualities. We know that induction technology outperforms gas in many aspects: speed, control, safety, cleanliness. Going back to the AHEP program and the failure to install single induction stove, one of the sub-objectives to come out of our electrification working group is figuring out kitchen electrification, commercial and residential. These must be approached very differently. For commercial kitchens, we believe in that outreach and education is best. We think behavioral science is the best avenue to increase residential kitchen electrification. We're working on developing a study that analyzes the effectiveness of different strategies to increase induction stove uptake. Is literature and education the most effective? What about hands-on experience through the use of induction hot plates to get people familiar with the technology and its better qualities? Or should we provide them with direct visual feedback on the pollution created by gas stoves? This graph shows the measurement of nitrogen dioxide in my kitchen, my personal kitchen, after baking potatoes. The red line is the EPA 1 hour limit for NO2 exposure. Does seeing that make you look at your stove differently? Cooking, because it is a more intimate experience with appliances, creates stronger opinions. Whether they're based on fact or not, our strategies must present approachable alternative perceptions that emphasize the benefits of induction cooking. One moment that has stuck to me is from the Healthy Homestead in early April, basically a home electrification fair. They had some induction stoves on display with cooking demonstration. I was watching a family with 3 children look at one demonstration. The husband is explaining to his wife how the surface was not hot after the pan was taking off. She was mildly impressed as her young children stood around them. He explained that it was easy to clean, which is demonstrated to her, still mildly impressed. Then they boiled some water, which happened within a minute, and I got to the pleasure of watching someone's face, watching the face of someone whose paradigm had just shifted. She was very much sold on the new technology. While I've discussed the DCSU role in our other electrification programs, it also has a rebate program that is open to all DC residents. These rebates promote efficiency, but more recently, fossil fuel burning appliances were removed. The DCSU contract with the DC government requires greenhouse gas savings performance benchmarks. In other words, the rebates need to have greenhouse gas reductions to continue. In FY23, there are 1,650 appliances, HVAC, and lawnmower incentives handed out. You may have also noticed there was a rebate for electric lawn care equipment included in that list. Previously included electric leaf blowers, but now is only for push and riding mowers. For both residents and businesses, leaf blowers were removed because the DC Council passed a law in January 2022 banning gas leaf blowers. Since gas powered leaf blowers were banned, the DCSU could no longer claim a greenhouse gas reduction from the electric leaf blower rebate. This is one of those, these rebates is one of those under the radar rebates that could have impacts on how electrification is perceived. As the report mentions, there is potential for gateway appliances, much like gas stoves have been a gateway for gas appliances in homes. There's a lot of new tools and appliances out there that expose people to electrification in a positive way. E-bikes are another popular item around DC. There's now a rebate for those as well. Scooters and golf carts also come to mind. As mentioned earlier, we are exploring the possibility of loaning and giving away induction hot plates to increase exposure with our funding constraints. Though we can show more initiative to get approachable electric appliance tools and transport into consumers' hands. When I think of gateway appliances, I also remember a conversation I had with an old colleague of mine who likes to rescue old trucks. He didn't believe EVs were the future because his experience with car batteries was old trucks couldn't keep a charge, but he could push start them. I explained that EVs are a totally different technology. He came to the connection himself that they were more like all the battery-powered power tools that have taken over the market. Something that's long existed and that people are familiar with, helped him better understand electrification. All right, and that's all for me. And I want to, thank you for listening to me, and thank you to Ruben for reminding me to speak on this webinar, and thank you, Friday, and thank you, Hannah, for moderating.
Great, thank you so much, Francisco. Okay, now we have moved into our roundtable discussion section. Thank you all for submitting questions in both the chat and in the Q&A. I think what I'm going to do is I've pulled some of these questions. I'm going to ask them individually to panelists. So maybe I'll go back to Reuven to start. So Reuven, I'm wondering if you could talk more about the connection between environmental motivation and electrification decisions by consumers. So what aspects of the role of electrification in addressing climate change still seem to not being messaged well? It seems like there's this interest in using electrification potentially to reduce our climate impact, but you also talked about some confusion amongst consumers as to what that role would be for them. So what are the pieces that are just like not getting through?
The classic unmute. Okay, we did find that folks who said, yes, climate change is happening, which is 74% of our sample, they could have said they were unsure or that it was not happening. Those that said that it was happening were more likely to switch. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of climate change that they think they should switch. Some of them certainly are saying that. But not believing in climate change comes with a whole host of other beliefs and ideologies. And it could just be that it's those other beliefs that are kind of driving down the desire to switch among those people. And the reason I say that is because even among people who believe in climate change, we were surprised to find that less than 50% think that electrification is critical for climate change mitigation. I think that there's an assumption that folks see electrification as a climate solution. And I think that we need to examine that assumption. In some cases, if we're talking about environment and climate, we have to draw a clearer path between electrification and climate. And so it can be an important lever, especially among certain communities that are concerned about climate change, but it needs to be delivered in the right way.
Thank you. I don't know if any other panelists had anything we wanted to add to that. No, if not, I have a question now for Friday. So Friday, first I want to say I love how the programs you talked about today are so benefits forward and really focusing on the joy and enthusiasm people can have for their electric appliances. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little more about some of the benefits of electrification that really connected with people that maybe you didn't initially expect, where there's some like pieces that people became very enthusiastic about that you really didn't see coming.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting about that. I have to say that there's not like one specific benefit that stands out. What stands out to us is that everybody has decided which benefit they love the most. So, Reuven, to your point about cleaning, I can tell you, I cooked on induction for 15 years. I love it for 1,000 reasons. I have a little kiddo, and the reason I love the most is that I can cook with him and feel really safe. But when we moved into a home and my mom moved downstairs, she then got her first induction cooktop, and she will tell you that the best thing in the world about it is that it's so easy to clean. That's the thing that she cares the most about. And my point is, oh my goodness, so sorry. I have a dog who of course is only going to bark when I'm answering my question. What I will say is that everybody has their own, they come to this with their own excitement. And I think it's really important to talk about all the benefits so that people can grasp the one that they like the most. I mean, Francisco's story about watching the family experience induction is very similar, right? Yeah, okay, it's easier to clean. Yeah, okay, it doesn't, get hot to the touch, but oh, I can boil water in 2 minutes. Now I'm in, right? Everybody's version of that is different. And I think it also applies to heat pumps, right? For some folks, a heat pump water heater provides a dehumidifier in your basement. That's amazing, right? If you are an older person or a sensitive person to the fluctuation of heat and cool, going from a gas-fired furnace that has this like very bathtub effect to a very smooth and easy climate that is, kind of always consistent, that has a huge benefit. So I guess I would just say, don't be shy about talking about the benefit that applies to you, but also recognizing that everybody's going to come to this with their own excitement about their own benefit. And that's okay, because the answer is going to always be the same. How you get there can be different.
Thank you. Okay, Francisco, I've got a question for you then. So it looks like, it was interesting that you had some trouble with the cooking part of the equation, specifically around contractors supporting and communicating the benefits of cooking. So I'm wondering if your organization how they're engaging with contractors, and if you're trying to sell them on the benefits similar to the ways that we're selling consumers on the benefits of cooking with electric appliances. Well, I think they're muted, Francisco.
One of the things that the DCSEU does is they do contractor education, and in order for them to be, do some of the work that the DCSEU is administering, they have to go through these trainings, basically get the right certifications. But it's mostly for like HVAC technicians and stuff like that, plumbers and HVAC. So, having them know about induction is kind of like outside of their zone. And especially like most people, when they're getting a stove, they're either doing it through like an interior designer or going to the local hardware store or appliance store. So, I think what we think is that we need to do more public outreach on that. I don't know if the installers or your contractors are going to be the best avenue for that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think I'm going to go back to Friday now. There was a question about affordability and sort of the money saving message for driving electrification. So and the question was really about how contextual that is. Does money saving only work when the price of natural gas is relatively high? Or have you found ways to kind of work in the money saving message in all regions you work in?
We don't talk so much about money savings. I can say, I think the only like slam dunk conversation on that is if you're switching from fuel oil or some kind of delivered fuel to a modern, a heat pump or something other than that, that's a pretty slam dunk economic question. In almost every other case, there are nuances, right? And there's a bunch of folks in the chat talking about panel upgrades and, do you have the right size voltage plug in your kitchen, right? Like there just are a lot of different constraints, especially in the built environment if we're talking about retrofits. And so what we talk more about is efficiency, right? That efficiency is for real, and that a heat pump water heater is going to be 3 to 4 times more efficient than a gas-fired water heater, end of story. Whether that has an incredible bill impact depends on, what your incentives are, and region to region, even within the state of California, can look very different about those upfront costs, and depending on the housing stock and depending on all of these other things, right? So talking about efficiency is one way of managing that. And then there certainly are folks who are purely driven by cost, but our experience is that it's not many, right? There are a lot of reasons why people make decisions. There are a lot of reasons why people choose their appliances, and comfort and control and health and joy and even aesthetic are all part of those, are all part of that equation. And so really, I think talking about efficiency and combining it with personal benefit, how this makes my kitchen cooler, how it means I have now air conditioning that I didn't have before, or you know, it makes, you know, it works just as good. My water heater works all the time, right? Like when we tell these stories, we can kind of demystify some of these questions and make it easier to make that change. And then it is not always a financial question, right? I mean, I wish it was a simple answer. If it was, I think it would be easier messaging. But no doubt, this is the reason we're all here, is because there's behavioral aspects to this that aren't just the bottom line.
Right. We're not strictly rational beings, for better or for worse.
Unfortunately and fortunately.
Yeah. Okay. So I've seen a couple questions about the relationship between having solar panels or driving an EV and electrifying other home appliances. So maybe Reuven, you can start with talking a little bit about what you see about the connections between that, but I'd love to hear from the other panelists too about what they see in the interaction between solar and EV and other home appliances.
Yeah, so as I indicated in the report and the presentation, I do think that having a positive electrification experience in one domain makes it more likely that you will be open to it in another domain. Like Francisco told me a story before about, you know, if you think of an EV as like your power tool, it's different than thinking of it as a replacement for your for your car. It's more like it works differently and the battery's different and you have different expectations. And if you have experience already that you can draw from, then you're more open to switching. And that's why I think that we see certainly lawn equipment and other upgrades being sort of coming one after the other. But I'd like to do further research on whether upgrading one appliance makes it more likely you'll upgrade the next one and the next one. I'd like to know if buying an EV could be a gateway to more electrification. As I mentioned, we kind of stumbled on this result with lawn equipment because it happened to be something we asked about. Same with solar. But we can go further. We can ask about EVs. We can do the more complicated analyses of looking at whether one device precedes the purchase of another one, and then we'd know, you know, what is the best first thing to suggest to a homeowner when you're in the home, and that's helpful not just for electrification, for the contractors that are implementing those measures, and I just think it's an interesting next step. We already have some evidence that solar and EVs are co-adopted, and there's a large and ongoing study on that. So yeah, we think you need to extend that to electrification measures.
Yeah. Francisco, do you have is there any connection you've noticed between solar and EV driving and home appliance electrification?
I don't know if EV, like I would assume so, but also I don't think so, because like I think that set of people who are interested in EVs may not, you know, they might be into it for other reasons. Because we've seen evidence like, you know, who are your Tesla buyers versus who are buying your other kind of EVs. So that kind of goes all over the place. But you know, going back to the anecdote that Reuven mentioned, is that, you know, he was very familiar with power tools, battery power tools, and those are lithium-ion batteries in them, or some of them at least. And so that was like much closer to what an EV is than his car, like the old lead acid car battery. And he trusts the power tool versus he doesn't trust the car battery. So, you know, I think it just kind of made him really kind of change his perception that the battery is a lot more reliable than he initially thought.
Thank you. Did you have any comments to add there, Friday, as well?
Yeah, I will just say that I would love to see the data. I would love to see a study that says this. But we talk to folks all the time and say, and this was actually a question I think earlier about how do you connect electrification to climate more generally, right? And often when we're doing community presentations, we're talking about why we need to electrify at all. Why are we even having this conversation? And then once people are like, oh yeah, okay, I'm bought in, where do I start? Our answer is like, it kind of depends on who you are and what you care about, right? I actually don't find that where you start, there's one single space that's more important, but rather that you do start. And what we see is that once you have started, then the rest of it becomes much easier. And so I'm interested in a electric appliance of any kind. Is it solar? Is it an EV? Is it a lawnmower? Is it a heat pump? Is it an induction range? It doesn't matter, right? It from my perspective, could be any of them, but we see that once you have one of those, then you're way more engaged in, oh, I'm ready to talk about what's the next one, what's the next one, what's the next one. Very, very, very few people are doing this all at once, right? So it's always a conversation around planning and, you know, deciding that, again, it's very individual. Maybe you have an appliance that's about to die and that's where you start. Or maybe you are really concerned about your indoor air quality, so you're going to start with cooking no matter what. Or, you know, whatever the reason is, there, you know, maybe you care the most about your carbon footprint and that's the thing that's driving you. And so you start with your water heater. So whatever that is, all of those are acceptable answers. How you know, the answer is the same, right? Get a heat pump, get an electric appliance. What got you to that answer? We just want to make sure that we're open to allowing those pathways. And I think as we have talked about this, our perspective on this is that people telling their personal stories really opens that door. It allows for all those different pathways to happen, and then creating a digital experience that allows people to explore around and say, okay, I got here from this place and now I can get to the next place, or I got here from this other place and now I can get to the next place, and like really trying to connect those dots for people and make it easier and use those trusted sources to do that.
Can I just quickly echo that I agree with Friday, and I wanted to note that even if I've indicated here that like solar or lawnmowers are a gateway, the most important thing, if let's say you're a contractor in someone's house, is to just listen to what their motivations are and what their needs are, and recommend something that works for them. So you can toss out all the, you know, literature about what you think is the best thing to offer first, but if you listen, you know.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us all. And this was a really great experience. I hope everybody learned something. I certainly did today. So